Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of the EA Global Summit. My name is Ryan Schmier from Sparx Services North America, and I'm joined today by a couple of fantastic panelists. Unfortunately, one of our panelists wasn't able to join due to an unexpected conflict, but we're going to go ahead and roll with it anyway. So I guess to kick this off, let me start by introducing Christal Russ from ERP International. Christal is a senior enterprise architect with over 23 years of experience working in this space. She's currently supporting the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And an interesting note about Christal, when she and the CMS folks presented last year, they were the most popular session and the one that was watched most on replay after the event. So we're glad to have you back, Christal, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up, Aaron Brown. Aaron, it's great to see you again as well. Aaron is a technologist with over 30 years of leading change and facilitating the growth of important technical ecosystems. He was the original developer of the inventory software used in every Blockbuster video store, and then led MCI's mass market telemarketing software development in the early 90s. He assisted General Motors in call center consolidations and now works with Austin Energy as the senior enterprise architect, reporting to the chief technical officer. Aaron's been an active day-to-day user of the Sparx Enterprise Architect and Sparx tools for over 5 years, and establishing an EA practice for the city of Austin, and then for Austin Energy. His work includes establishing data governance practice, leading architecture councils, evaluating technology change within the utility. And he's sort of the lead Sparx guy at the city of Austin. So Aaron, welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, we may have another panelist join us partway through, and if so, I'll do that introduction when he gets here, but let me kick it off with the first set of questions. So the first question, and I'll pose this to both of you, but if Christal, you want to start off, is help us understand what business problems your organization or your clients are trying to solve through architecture.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So one of the major challenges we're facing, or our clients are facing, is trying to break down organizational silos. So we're trying to achieve that in two different ways. The first way is by providing a self-service decision support capability using multiple data sources across the organization. And the second thing we're doing is collaborating with other organizations to understand what it is they're doing and how they're using enterprise architecture. So for the self-service decision support capability, we're focusing on identifying user needs, the required data, and how to actually use the data and consume it. We're also utilizing APIs to integrate the data into our EA repository and then linking that up with the remainder of the EA content. And then we're also gathering feedback from users of the dashboard to determine its effectiveness and the potential improvements, offering additional visualizations or data as needed. The second thing we're working on, like I said before, is we're fostering collaborations both internally and with industry and across the federal agencies. This is working very, very well for our client. ERP is connecting our clients with government and industry experts to actually share insight on EA development and implementations. By working with these organizations, our clients can get a better understanding of our EA processes, data, and use cases to actually identify what is applicable to their needs. We have even reused government capabilities as government furnished information, GFI, resulting in a cost savings to the client. This is essential for our clients to actually see that they're not alone in facing the challenges of adopting EA within the organization, but we also want to build a collaborative community to enhance EA knowledge.
Gotcha. So Aaron, before I get to you, a follow-up question to Christal. We're going to hear from our next speaker after this, who also works in the government space, about some of the regulations and stuff that really drive how EA is performed within the government. What's the general sentiment you're hearing from your government clients about are they scared about implementing enterprise architecture? Are they excited about it? What's the general temperature and feeling on the implementation of architecture?
Yeah, so the Division of Enterprise Architect for CMS, for Medicare and Medicaid, Mike Azar is doing a fantastic job going out and demonstrating the tools. People are getting very, very excited about getting access to the data to actually make decisions. People are wanting to use the tool, so we're having to ramp up very quickly on training and getting people access to the tool. So people are very excited that they're actually getting, there's a one-stop shop for that data, and they're getting insight into the rest of the organization.
Fantastic, fantastic. So Aaron, let me kind of pose the same question to you. Austin, a little bit different than Federal Center for Medicare Services. What sorts of business challenges are you guys facing that you're trying to solve through architecture these days?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. And so Austin Energy is a utility. We're a division of the city of Austin. So we are considered local government, and we're bound by all of the different constructs of both federal and local government because of that. And when we first began to evaluate Austin Energy, and I'm going to skip kind of the city initiatives more than 5 years ago, but about 5 years ago when we started, I came into an environment in which IT had been being run in a very laissez-faire manner. It was like, oh, we know if everything crashes, we have a list of the things we think that we should start, and we're going to try to get the servers going. And if we're going to implement something new, we're going to rush in a direction until we find a roadblock, and then we're going to sit there because no one's going to know who to speak to. The project manager is going to ask 50 people, but there wasn't really kind of a consolidation of information. There were lots of projects in which a consultant would have come in, did their work, they hand them a DVD with all the documentation associated with it, and that DVD goes right in this amazing file cabinet right on the top of their desk. And then 3 years later, when they're cleaning their desk, they go, oh, what's this? And it goes right in the garbage. And so the idea being there was no like kind of legacy architecture to kind of reference, no reference architecture of any kind. There wasn't even a list of all of the programs, applications, and services that the utility was using. I mean, basically, the contracting team would go, oh, something's about to expire, and everyone would rush in that direction. And then another contract's going to expire, and they'd rush in that direction. So early on, we realized that, okay, if this is going to really work, we have to kind of get our ducks in a row. So that started with rationalizing the product portfolio, kind of finding out, well, what do we have? And then determining how are we going to introduce new technology into our environment, because there was a whole tech delivery component that was being done kind of by the seat of everyone's pants. They would engage a third party who would come in and work on it, and it would be fixed price, but until it wasn't, because then there wasn't enough information, right? So we've gone about kind of beginning to solve our problems for future planning, our problems of identifying what the current environment is all about. Because, there are project costs. It's a government entity, so you have to budget that. And initially our budgets were going up, but we had no way to kind of rationalize for anybody why that was going up. What are the things that we're seeing that are causing that increase? And architecture has allowed us over the last 5 years to get our arms around that. So the budgeting cycle and the way that technology is delivered, and knowing what the current state is and where you want to go and how many interfaces are going to be involved, those are all very basic questions that you would think a typical IT shop would have right at the fingertips. But the reality of it was there wasn't really very much there when we first started. Also, we had business relationship managers who were talking with our customers to kind of glean what new technology they wanted, but there was no real way of them categorizing functions and features that they wanted to improve. So the idea of capabilities had to be introduced, and the idea of, okay, now that we're talking about this capability, how are you doing in it? Are you good? Are you bad? You need something fixed? So heat maps, we started integrating that as well, just to introduce a nomenclature in which people could talk about the technical ecosystem, which we all take it for granted, but many people can't articulate what it is they want the fact that they've gotten where they want to be, and what their problems are, because they don't have a deeper understanding of it. So we, creating our critical application list, what are the things we're most concerned about, became a big task for us. And then we've taken that and begun to kind of expand that with our tool set. Also, data governance was another thing that was plaguing us early on, in which we had people who were releasing data to the public, but that data didn't necessarily match other data that was being released to the public. Or in some instances, people hadn't even given permission for that data to be used or released to the public, because had they asked, they would have been told no, because that was dirty data, needed to be cleaned, but those people didn't know that, so they released bad data. And so data governance was another thing that we immediately identified as something that we needed to implement, and came up with process and nomenclatures once again, and an agreement among all data owners of how to proceed in certain situations. So those are some of the key business things that the problems, and then kind of what we crafted to help resolve some of that.
These are two very different organizations, but I'm hearing some parallels here. It's all about the data. It's about getting the data in a place, in a form, and presenting it in a way that people can use it to make decisions. It seems to be a very, very common thread here. Aaron, you also brought up one other piece, which was helping people understand the problems that they were trying to solve and whether they were actually solving them in their technology investments. That's a very, very, very common problem, not just in government organizations, but also in commercial teams who are trying to roll out technology, drive change. They don't always understand why they're trying to do something and what the underpinning problem is. And so they really don't know whether they ever get there or not. So that's a big challenge. The next question is, how has the focus of your architecture team changed over the past few years? And what are you seeing coming over the next few years? And what I'd like you guys to do is think back 5 years ago, think back pre-COVID, think about how things were being done and what you were focusing on and what mattered at that point in time. And how has the question of what's important and what's mattered changed over the last few years? So, Christal, do you want to start this one off?
Sure. For us, it's about doing more with less. So, budgets used to be bigger in the past. Now the budgets are getting smaller and smaller. And so we really need to understand how to deliver more capability with less budget. So ERP has been identifying new and innovative ways to improve and expand and maintain enterprise architectures while working remotely with minimal resources. So we've been using, collaboration tools to enhance our communication and exchanging of ideas. And we've been using tools like Teams, Zoom, SharePoint, Confluence, Jira, and Mural to actually help support in building the architecture virtually. Our company's also been working with our clients to identify areas of expansion and usability of the architecture and identifying data for reuse. So we've spent a lot of time building content from scratch. So we're saying, don't build it from scratch. There's other places that have built similar data. Why not take that data and reuse it here in our organization? We'll have to go through the data, clean it up, but at least we're not starting from scratch. That has greatly reduced the time in creating the new content and turning it around to actually support the use cases. We're also identifying opportunities for AI to automate repetitive tasks and provide enhanced analysis of our data to maintain the architecture content and integrate that content. So all those are things that we really weren't using before COVID, and now we're using those things to just make things more efficient on a lesser budget.
Aaron, what are you seeing?
So from our perspective, I talked a little bit about it in the last question, but early on, pre-EA, when a new project was going to be done, they brought together all of the operations folks and had kind of a folklore discussion in which people tried to project what they thought they knew about what the architecture was, which servers were involved, et cetera, things like that. But then as we began to amass information and use the tools, now we have a pretty good library of current state diagrams that now we are identifying. And it was interesting, the first couple of years, people would ask, about something, and in architecture, we would go, oh, yeah, we have a picture, and someone would go, well, that's not really up to date because you haven't worked with us and we haven't told you all the things that you need to know. So there's like information hiding because there was a big fear of enterprise architecture. There's some mythologies about ivory towers and things like that, which is really about how you execute, not necessarily the capability. So having just a repository of current state helped supercharge some of our tech initiation. So it was easy to go, oh, if we want to replace this, here's a picture. There's 17 interfaces, and oh, by the way, it's writing to the general ledger as well. So we know at least the finance group's going to be involved, and these 5 other things are going to be involved. And oh yeah, the storage associated with this is this. So are you ready to take on all of that for a new initiative? And a lot of times at that point, people will go, whoa, we didn't realize what a house of cards it was. We'll back away from that. Right? And so that's what. So early on, no one would back away from a project. It would just be full steam ahead, and then they would get knee deep into it, spend a lot of money, and realize, oh wow, maybe we didn't really want to do this to begin with. With most of the architecture captured now, we can really estimate what we think, going to a SaaS solution versus an on-prem will cost us. And now, after 5 years of amassing data, we're now to the place where we can begin to roadmap our critical applications. So before, if someone would have said, can you project for me over the next 3 years everything that's going to have to be upgraded in your environment, plus how much resource we're going to have available for new things, you would have scratched your head and said, that's impossible, we can't do that. But today, we're beginning to drift into that space of being able to effectively plan with a fairly decent accuracy of what the costs will be. And yeah, it's still thumb to the wind. And when we go to a vendor, we can't get quotes because of government constructs. So we have to kind of ask for estimates of things if we're going to a vendor for estimated costs. But in general, it's a far more informed and supported. By the way, when architecture comes up with an answer, people look at the net present value, the current and the future state diagrams, and they know whether they want to buy in or not, with the financials and the picture of what's affected. That's all very different than 5 years ago, for sure.
That's fantastic. And when you look at sort of these evolutions of maturity, and we listen to what Christal is discussing about the CMS journey and some of the federal government clients that are moving towards how do I compile the data, how do I drive it into decision making, and then we overlay that with the maturity curve that you're encountering with Austin Energy, we can actually see that it's the same process, the same evolution you're going through. Austin Energy is a little farther ahead, though, where they're saying, okay, we've got the data, we know we can use it for decisions. Now let's talk about what decisions we want to make. And so, it's interesting to see how these two experiences sort of coincide with each other. You guys are on the same curve at different points. And I think that's true with any architecture team. There's a life cycle of things that you're going through. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about, some of the issues and challenges in our current environment. And the first topic I'd like to hit on is the issue of workforce. This is something that I've talked to a lot of organizations about recently, and the architecture workforce has changed and is continuing to change. So, what are you seeing in the way of trends in the workforce, and how are you approaching them? Aaron, do you want to start with this one? Sure,
I'll start. And it's interesting because currently 3 of our consultants on the EA team, they've been turned into, their positions have been turned into full-time positions. So I'm having to now interview for these positions. And so I am definitely in touch with this topic. And I think that the biggest problem is that no one knows what enterprise architecture is. And so I got tons of people who believe that they're enterprise architects because they were primary tech delivery folks for an application like like Workday or Maximo that touched the enterprise. Therefore, they're an enterprise architect. And if you talk to them about, well, okay, do you know sequence diagrams? Can you do activity diagrams? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what capability is? There's like blank looks on their faces. And so I think, today there is a gap between people understanding what the role of an EA is. And, also in our environment, enterprise architecture itself has, and if you read the trades and the boards on LinkedIn and so forth, originally there was a very clear delineation. Enterprise architecture is strategic and solution architecture and everything else is tactical, right? And then you had Zachman come along and go, well, it isn't really, there is operational stuff, and EA can really help here and be constructive. And so it kind of muddied the water where before there was a very clear delineation. And now if you read an EA job description on LinkedIn, sometimes they talk about kind of things that you'd think would be like the chief technical officer responsibility. So I still think that there's evolution going on, but in the younger workforce today who see a high dollar sign on the salary, they want the position, but do they have the breadth of knowledge that typically is required for the EA position? EA is an advanced position. It is. It's like you wouldn't take somebody with an intro to math degree and ask them to be a CPA. There are specialized skills that are required to be a CPA. There are specialized skills that are required to be an enterprise architect. And so as a younger workforce comes up, well, who's teaching those skill sets, right? Who's teaching facilitation 101 and 102, right? Who is teaching people how to diagram and teaching them Archimate and making them kind of understand that there are different viewpoints to every problem, and you need to be able to kind of show graphically information so that people can glean what they need to glean out of it. That's an art. And that takes experience and training and mentorship. And so you can't just, a lot of people can just go, hey, I'm an EA and I'll fake it till I make it kind of thing. But there is definitely a skill set associated with enterprise architecture. And so I think that that's kind of the challenge today, is for the younger workforce and our senior workforce who are trying to hire for enterprise architecture roles to understand that TOGAF is not just something that you go do in a week. It's actually a methodology, and it's important to understand if you're going to be an enterprise architect. Let's see, I had some other notes here. It really is about the breadth of knowledge, right? So if I hire you as an enterprise architect and you only have 2 years worth of experience doing something cool, are you going to understand security mechanisms? Are you going to understand the various authentication models that need to be considered in different situations based on different customers? Those are all questions that you can't just kind of fake your way through it. So I think the younger workforce today needs more definition, is what I think.
Gotcha. Christal, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I totally agree with Aaron. And I'd like to actually focus more on the mentorship programs for up and coming enterprise architects, because I feel like the private sector companies need to invest in developing mentorship programs within their companies to effectively advise, train, and guide the rising generation of enterprise architects. The focus needs to be really less on requiring the classic certifications, but rather on exposing them to diverse EA programs to understand the wide array of EA practices and challenges and the successes that they've had. With more of the workforce working remote, mentorship needs to also focus on, building analytical skills, identifying opportunities for networking and collaboration, as well as how to train other EAs. We're always getting new EAs on our programs. We have to learn how to train them. And at ERP, we're actually taking time to promote the advancement for future EAs. We're teaming them up with more experienced enterprise architects to ensure that they're learning best practices while enabling the future advancement to promote their career. So we're doing a lot of work bringing this younger generation up. We have people retiring, and we need to get them teamed up and essentially do that brain transfer over to the new generation. So I totally agree with Aaron.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're seeing similar things on our side too. As I go and meet with different organizations who are implementing EA practices or looking to change the EA practices they have. The key challenges we're finding is the workforce is aging. When it comes to EAs, we did a survey last year that showed that about 30% of the enterprise architects self-identified as being within 5 years of retirement. That's a third of our workforce who are the qualified EAs. And then at the same time, companies were self-acknowledging that there was a gap. They hadn't done enough over the last 5 years to train up the next generation, and they were facing a skill gap and a knowledge gap. When these people are retiring, they're taking the knowledge and experience with them. And as they take the knowledge and experience with them, there's nobody to fill the jobs. As I've talked to folks over the last 6 to 9 months on this, we've seen a number of job postings on LinkedIn for enterprise architects, and after 3 to 6 months, the postings are being closed unfilled. They cannot find suitable resources to fill them. There's not enough qualified people available in the workforce to do the jobs that people want to do, and that's really kind of scary. I've asked the question of a number of folks in terms of how are we going about addressing this problem, and some organizations are giving up. They're saying, you know what, we got to figure out how to deal with just not having these people. Others are taking a more creative approach where they're saying, well, the same business problems need to be solved. What if we handed this to a more junior person, handed it to a millennial and said, use your mindset, use your tool set in terms of the tools that you would use. How would you go about solving these business problems? And they've had some mixed results. Some organizations have been very successful with, allowing the younger generation to solve problems in new ways, unconstrained by the old ways of thinking. Others, it's been disastrous. It all came down to company culture. But, clearly, there's workforce challenges. And the challenge that's going to be facing all of us is, as we drive our transformation initiatives forward, where are we going to find the skilled, knowledgeable people that we need to support us as we go through? And it may be like the government is facing, that is, we need to figure out how to do more with less people, not just less budget, but how do we solve this problem or address these needs and these capabilities with 2 people instead of 10 people because we can't find the other 8. It may be some new technology that comes into play there too. So the next question on here shifts over to technology, which is, how do you see AI? Okay, so we can't have a conference in 2024 that we don't talk about AI at least once on a panel discussion. So how do you see AI and other technology trends impacting your architecture team? So Aaron, do you want to talk about AI and technology here for a bit?
Yeah, I will. So with at a utility, when you're a major utility for a city, there are lots and lots of requirements associated with protecting our infrastructure data, protecting data about the network, protecting data about our customers, their PII information, protecting, a thousand other components. And then we see tools, open AI tools like ChatGPT, where someone can just load in, give it a 1,000 pieces of information and say, hey, organize this for me and tell me what you find out. And so we've had to, everyone wants to use AI, and everybody's trying to use AI in lots of different ways, but we've had to really be concerned because today, although AI has been around forever, and if you don't believe me, go research Watson. AI has been around for a long, long time. It's just now that someone has made it accessible to the general public that it's really growing, I believe. And so, but the challenge though is, although these tools are out there, do they observe privacy labels in Microsoft, for example? Do they take the data that you feed it in and copy it to some other resource to use in the future? And how do you create an LLM that is private to your environment and that doesn't create hallucinations? If everybody doesn't know what that term is, that means having bad data in your AI, so therefore it spits out bad data, right? And that's where you get these things that say, oh, Nazis are great people and you should hang out with them, kind of thing. And so yeah, how do you introduce this technology into your environment in which it's safe, auditable, follows all the security components, can verify that the right data is not being fed to the wrong source, and provides accurate information? Those are all key components, as well as, just like your data governance, there's an AI governance needed, right? Which tools are we allowed to use? Who can use them? Who says that they're allowed to use them and that you can't use them? In government, everything's by consensus. So there would be a governing board over AI technology. And so, and any major technology, but AI is a real disruptor. And we have lots of analysts within Austin Energy today who would love to rush out and use whatever AI tool they could to do the analysis that they're doing in Excel right now and have it done for them on a much broader scale. We've been very, very, very cautious about it because of all these other constructs. So we've been evaluating, vendors, just like we do any technology implementation, by the way, evaluating the capabilities, evaluating our security needs, evaluating our storage needs, and then evaluating all of those vendors against each other. And you find out very quickly which ones are the leaders. But so with AI, we have a whole task force that's evaluating this right now. As a matter of fact, there was a meeting I missed this morning because I was attending one of these sessions about AI and some of the work that we're doing there as well. So, but yeah, these are things that people are excited about, but we don't move quickly on any of that, because if we make one bad mistake, it'll be in the news, it'll be everywhere. Austin Energy released 5 users pieces of information, they're no longer a safe place, that kind of thing. So we have to be really, really careful how we approach it. But it's like any other technology evaluation, and we're gaining our knowledge base.
Fantastic. Christal, what's your thought on AI and other technology trends?
Yeah, so on the CMS EA program, they are very, very interested in utilizing AI to help with a specific use case, and that is to help us integrate or map frequently changing architecture content. And so the way that we're doing that is in the CMS enterprise architecture, we're pulling laws, policies, and regulations from the Federal Register into the architecture. And then our vision is to take that information and map it to the business functions to be able to understand the impact that it has to changing regulations for business processes, the data, systems, and technology. And just to give you an idea, we did this same effort over at DoD, where we were actually mapping federal regulations to the architecture. That required, at a minimum, 6 full FTEs to maintain that mappings throughout the year. And at CMS, what we're looking at utilizing AI is to help us maintain the mappings. We're looking at 1 FTE to help us with that. So that will hopefully ensure proper integration and support impact analysis efforts, really to identify modernization opportunities. CMS has AI policies that they've been developing, and they are continuing to refine those policies and guidance on how to implement and address any security concerns, what Aaron kind of mentioned, identified based on implementation. So we plan on working closely with Sparx Services of North America to develop an AI solution for us that we can reuse for other organizations for this specific use case.
Fantastic, fantastic. I think there's a common thread there, which is emerging technology can be very powerful. It can also be very dangerous. And you need to think really hard about not only how it's used by individuals, but how it's used by organizations. And I think, Aaron, your take it slow, let's be safe about this is a great approach. And not just for government organizations, but for enterprises as well. Just think about the impacts of stitching together all your enterprise data and suddenly making it available, through an interface that you're not sure who all can access it and what they can do with it. And when you have contractors and consultants at play and suppliers who may have access to that data as well, they may be working with your competitors. It's a really scary proposition, and I think enterprise architects are going to play an important role in helping their organizations understand how to adopt this and other new technologies safely. We actually have a question that came in from one of the attendees, which is rather interesting. If you could start your careers again, what improvements would you change for the benefits of your companies and or governments? What would you do different if you could start your career journeys over again? Aaron, why don't you start with this one?
Wow, that's a hard question because I feel like, I mean, my degree's in applied math, right? So from early on, I was, doing decomposition problems, and I don't think I would have it any other way. And I think that early on, my coding experience kind of helped lay the groundwork for being able to do leadership in that role. I think if anything, I mean, it would have been more valuable if during college, but okay, I'm 60 years old. So when I was going to college, like literally, we were creating. I wrote a Fortran program, and I had a stack of cards that went into an IBM card reader, right? So it's a little different than it is today. But it would have been great to have had a class that talked about uh, uh, functional decomposition of an enterprise as opposed to a specific problem, right? So today there are lots of classes about enterprise architecture, about construction of an API, about how to apply this scripting and that scripting, and how to leverage Unix if you want to, and the differences between distributed and non-distributed. All that kind of stuff was coming into play while I was growing up. So but it would have been wonderful to have some education associated with, how do I look at an overall enterprise, and then the components within it that are related. Because sometimes there are things that are related that are a little surprising, right? But you're not taught in school that, hey, while you're doing your business requirements, you should really inquire to the political state of the union as well, because there could be an election in a year that everybody's priorities change. So, right? No one teaches you that in school, but I think that there needs to be, or there should be, something like that. It would help people get through it quicker. That's the only thing that I can. I mean, it's so different, and also I would be lying if I didn't say I don't know what's being taught today. I mean, in the last 20 years, I haven't been in a college, so I can't speak to what's being trained and what isn't being trained. But a more enterprise, mindset, and some kind of classes to assist in that probably would be good. Like, today, once again, someone says, hey, we have lots of data, you need data governance. Did I ever take a class on data governance or data management? I didn't, but I bet there are probably classes like that somewhere today. And if they're not, then that would be my answer, classes like that.
Okay, good. Christal, what's your thoughts on this?
I was very fortunate in my career because I actually got a lot of on-the-job training. I worked on the world's largest enterprise architecture program, which was the DoD BEA. We had 187 architects on that program. So I was very fortunate to learn so much, not only about enterprise architecture as a whole, but I actually worked in every single role in every capacity on that program. So I got to learn hands-on how to do it, how to do quality reviews, how to actually build system views or data models or process models, or how to integrate architecture, how to use doors for requirements and get that all integrated. So I learned so much. But the one thing I will tell you, I wish I would have worked much more closely with bringing organizations together. In many cases, I'm finding that, the old saying, build it and they will come, is like not really good with enterprise architecture. But in this case, many times you have to build it to show them the usefulness of the architecture. So from that perspective, I feel really good. Other area I would have wished to have focused on was change management. We build architecture, but we never talk about how we're actually going to change an organization using it. How policies need to be implemented, how processes need to be implemented to actually support that change. and actually even using the architecture, we need to have well-defined processes to actually maintain that content and use it and keep it fresh over time. So that's kind of my recommendation.
Gotcha. I'm going to add my take on this as well because I'm going to take it a different direction. I wish someone would have told me when I was in college to go find a mentor and then go find another mentor. And over the course of your career, build that personal board of directors, those people who you can, who have different jobs in different companies, the people you look up to and people you trust that you can get ideas from and talk things out with. I didn't learn that until probably 15, 20 years ago when someone told me, I still remember the statement, they said, everyone has something to teach and everyone has something to learn. And I think that was some really great wisdom. I guess the other guidance that I would give people and what I would do differently, I got a chance to work with some people in my first career out of college that are now CIOs, CTOs, CEOs in a variety of different industries, in a variety of different organizations, and I didn't do a very good job of maintaining the personal relationships that I developed early in my career. You know, we were all working on the same projects originally, but now, you know, I know people all over the world. I really wish I would have kept in touch with them and, you know, just made the effort to maintain the interpersonal relationships. Because it doesn't matter what you know, when it's time for you to make your next step in your career, it's going to matter more about who you know and the connections that you can make. And it's great that we have things like LinkedIn and Facebook, but are those people really connections? Are they really friends? You know, are they people that you could call up and say, hey, you know, what are you doing? You know, is there some way I can get involved and work with you again? And so my guidance to the younger generation is, you know, pay attention to your personal relationships. They are the people who are going to open doors for you later in life. Okay, I think that is actually our last question. So let me go ahead and wrap this up. Let me start by thanking Christal and Aaron for being here today and sharing their thoughts. Let me also thank the audience for participating, asking some really great questions, and taking your time to participate in this year's summit. Session recordings will be posted on the EA Global Summit website and the Collaborate YouTube channel after the events. If you'd like to connect with our speakers, you can actually reach out to sales@sparksystems.us, and I'll have my team connect you in with Christal or Aaron or any of the other speakers from the summits. The next session will begin in about 15 minutes. And it is a discussion about the business case for architecture in the government by Patrick Simon. Fantastic topic we're about to talk about there. The session link is in your registration email. So again, thank you everyone for joining this session of the EA Global Summit, and we look forward to seeing you on the next session.